Early evening BBC News with Clive, Myrie.
Making history, a NASA spacecraft survives the closest ever flypast of the Sun. The data it gathers could help us better understand weather events here on Earth. An initial investigation finds the crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines jet, killing 38 people on Christmas Day, was due to external interference.
And I'm at Manchester Airport with the latest on disruption for passengers because of widespread fog.
Use more open prisons to ease overcrowding, says the man advising on government policy. And our cinema audience is bouncing back with the help of some new and older classics. Hello there, a NASA spacecraft has made history by surviving the closest ever approach to the Sun. Scientists received a signal from the Parker Solar Probe yesterday evening after being out of communication for several days, but scientists now say it's safe and operating normally after passing just 3.8 million miles from the solar surface. Currently, we on Earth are about 93 million miles away from the Sun. The data the spacecraft gathers could help better forecast our own weather events, as Palab Ghosh reports.
It seems like science fiction, sending an uncrewed spacecraft to the Sun. NASA's Parker Solar Probe was designed to withstand its scorching heat. But could it? NASA has now confirmed that it has. The spacecraft sent back a beacon signal indicating that it survived the closest ever approach to the Sun.
We have never had a human-made object so close to the Sun. Also, we had to not melt. That's why the Parker has this heat shield that holds the instruments at room temperature and keeps the heat of the Sun away. And these are just amazing feats. And so it's so amazing that we are so close and really getting to measure in detail this material up close.
Liftoff of the mighty Delta IV Heavy rocket.
There have been many missions to study the Sun, but there's so much more we can learn, especially the Sun's atmosphere, which we can see from Earth shimmering during a total solar eclipse.
This new data from this very incredibly close approach of the Sun, just touching the surface of that corona, is going to hopefully give us a lot more information about exactly what's going on in our beautiful, beautiful Sun that heats up and gives us light.
By getting so close, the probe will enable scientists to see how the Sun's powerful magnetic field twists and lifts material to create solar flares. This may help them understand why the Sun's atmosphere is so much hotter than its surface, and how it emits a stream of charged particles called the solar wind, which has its effect on Earth when it hits our atmosphere, creating the northern lights. The results will help scientists predict when there are powerful solar storms, which can disable communication satellites and affect weather patterns. The initial data will be sent back by the spacecraft on the 1st of January.
It is, Palab, an astonishing achievement. How can the data that this spacecraft gathers, how can we use that?
Well, it is astonishing, not least how on earth they managed to keep the instruments alive. Somehow they created a heat shield that kept the spacecraft and instruments at room temperature. But there is the science. We're going to learn how the powerful magnetic field whips up these enormous solar flares. We're going to learn why the Sun's atmosphere is so much hotter than the surface, and we're going to learn how it generates these charged particles, which generates those beautiful northern lights, which can disrupt our weather systems, our power systems, and our communication systems. But crucially, there's the basic science, simply finding out how our own Sun actually works.
Fascinating. All right, Palab, thank you. Palab Ghosh, our science correspondent there. Now, Azerbaijan Airlines says initial results of an investigation into the crash of one of its planes on Christmas Day suggest there'd been external interference with the aircraft. And this evening, the White House said it's seen early indications that suggests it was possibly brought down by Russian air defense systems. Well, 38 people died when the jet came down 2 miles short of the runway at Aktau Airport in Kazakhstan. It had originally tried to land at Grozny Airport in southern Russia, but witnesses say there was an explosion before the plane was diverted. John Donnison has the very latest.
This is the moment the plane went down. It's remarkable anyone survived. But emerging from the wreckage, some did. The flight had been diverted to Kazakhstan after passengers heard bangs when it tried to land at its original destination, Grozny, in Chechnya.
They say there were 2 bangs, but I only heard one. It was quite substantial. I honestly didn't hear the second one. At first, only some of the oxygen masks fell out. Not all of them.
Investigators are now examining the damage to the outside of the plane. The owner, Azerbaijan Airlines, said only that it had suffered external physical and technical interference. The Kremlin has again refused to comment on speculation that it was mistakenly brought down by a Russian air defense system.
I'd like to point out that the situation on that day and during those hours in the area around Grozny Airport was very difficult. Ukrainian military drones were carrying out terrorist attacks on civilian infrastructure in the city of Grozny and others nearby.
In Azerbaijan today, the first funerals for some of the 38 people who were killed. Why they died will take time to find out and will likely be disputed. John Donnison, BBC News.
NATO says it will enhance its military presence in the Baltic Sea after Russia was accused of sabotaging Estonia's main power link in the Gulf of Finland. It comes after a Finnish Coast Guard crew boarded the oil tanker Eagle S and steered it into Finnish waters. The EU says the tanker was part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet, and the failure of the undersea cable was the latest in a series of suspected attacks on critical infrastructure. Heavy fog is causing problems for passengers at some of the country's busiest airports with temporary air traffic restrictions in place. The National Air Traffic Service says it's reduced the flow of flights to maintain aircraft safety. Gatwick and Manchester, among those airports, are particularly affected by the bad weather. Well, Yunus Muller is at Manchester Airport for us this evening. Yunus, just how bad is it there?
Clive, much of the UK has been shrouded in mist in recent days, and that fog has had an impact on several airports across the country, including Manchester, the country's third largest, and Gatwick. What's happened is that there have been a temporary air restrictions put in place. That's only ever done for safety reasons, and the situation is being constantly monitored here. I've noticed a number of flights have been delayed, a few cancellations. The airport says, like most airports, it's experiencing these issues. Flights have been delayed for up to an hour and a half. London Gatwick has also apologised for any inconvenience to passengers. Again, this is down to low visibility. EasyJet, one airline, has also confirmed that its flights have been affected. The advice, of course, to passengers who are still arriving at this airport and a number of airports is to, first of all, do what they would normally do, and that is to check with their airline to see if there's any disruption and then take it from there.
All right, Yunus, thank you. Yunus Muller there live at Manchester Airport. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has been paying tribute to his brother Nick, who died on Boxing Day at the age of 60. He'd been living with cancer. The Prime Minister said in a statement, "My brother Nick was a wonderful man. He met all the challenges life threw at him with courage and good humour. We will miss him very much." Now, it's been suggested the UK should make more use of open prisons to avoid overcrowding and reduce reoffending. The former Conservative Justice Secretary, David Gauke, is leading the government's sentencing review and says prisons have run out of space. He believes there's an opportunity for the system to change if inmates are given more freedom to leave jail during the day for work and study.
Reoffending is a big problem in this country. It is high. We have a higher rate of reoffending than we do in Spain, for example. And if we can bring that reoffending level down, we bring crime down, there will be fewer victims.
Henry Zeffman has more from Westminster. Henry, how's this gone down, this suggestion?
Well, Clive, the prison capacity crisis was practically the first crisis this government identified after they took office in July. And we heard within days of them taking office of their plan to address it in the short term, releasing more prisoners early in their sentence. They've also been talking more recently about the long term, building 4 new prisons over the next 7 years. But as for the medium term, the government says it wants to look at who they put in prison and in what conditions they keep them in prison. And that's where David Gauke comes in, because he's been charged with leading the sentencing review. Now, his comments today are particularly significant. They're the first really clear indication of his direction of travel we've got. And it's pretty radical. You know, in Spain, where he's drawing inspiration, around 25% of inmates are in open prisons. In England and Wales, it's just 6%. So shifting in the Spanish direction would be a very big shift indeed. He'll make his formal recommendations to the government in the spring. But if they follow David Gauke's direction of travel, it'll be a pretty radical move indeed.
All right. OK, Henry, thank you. Henry Zeffman, our chief political correspondent there at Westminster. A man has been charged with 4 counts of attempted murder after 4 pedestrians were hit by a car in the West End of London on Christmas Day. Anthony Gilheany, who's 30, has also been charged with causing serious injury by driving while disqualified, driving a motor vehicle dangerously and possession of a bladed article in a public place. He'll appear at the Old Bailey next month. Medics at one of northern Gaza's last functioning hospitals say the Israeli military has forcibly evacuated the facility. Video footage shows people leaving the hospital in single file with their hands raised. Officials from the Hamas-run health ministry say dozens of patients and hundreds of other people were made to leave. The Israeli military said it was carrying out an operation in the area which it called a Hamas terrorist stronghold. Pope Francis will deliver Radio 4's Thought for the Day tomorrow morning. He'll be calling for hope and kindness and emphasize the importance of humility. The message was recorded in Italian but will be translated into English. And he's the second pope after Benedict XVI in 2010 to deliver a Thought for the Day. It can be heard at 7:45 a.m. It's been a difficult year for the cinema business, with chains such as Cineworld and Odeon shutting some theatres following competition from streaming services. But cinema bosses say there may be signs of a recovery. Here's Joe Black.
Are people born wicked?
Where else would you want to explore the wonderful world of Oz than on the big screen? Magical blockbusters like Wicked are why we flock to movie theatres.
You're green.
Yeah. But with recent headlines about closures, is that cinematic spell beginning to fade?
People are watching from home, streaming and all that stuff, so that's why they are closing, probably.
I don't think it's too expensive. It's a nice day out. Obviously, you've got the few hours of the cinema as well. We usually then go and have a little wander around the areas around there as well. So it gives us a day out.
All those nostalgic memories of going to the cinema as a kid, I think they come flooding back when you go to a proper cinema.
In recent years, cinema has found itself in its own dramatic plot, hit hard by the pandemic, the popularity of streaming, the cost of living crisis and the Hollywood writers' strike, which halted most film and TV production. Last year, one of the biggest chains, Cineworld, went into administration and is now restructuring its business. This Odeon in Kettering has been here since the 90s, but will soon be demolished following unsuccessful negotiations over its lease.
It's a loss for the whole community. There's all sorts of groups that make use of it. It's very popular and unfortunately won't be with us for much longer, and that's a major disaster.
Figures show the number of cinemas in the UK has fallen. In 2020, there were 878 venues, down to 825 3 years later. Ticket sales are also down on pre-pandemic levels. But here is the plot twist. Admissions are now starting to creep back up.
Hopefully, we're over the worst of it in terms of site closures. There's always been an ebb and flow of sites closing and sites opening and sites being refurbished. But I think we're back to something like a stable base of cinemas. And what we'll see into 25 and 26 is those admissions climbing across broadly the same network of cinemas.
Many operators like the Royal in Sutton Coldfield, which only opened 6 months ago, believe creating an experience for cinema goers is the future of this industry. A comfy seat, artisan food and perhaps an alcoholic drink alongside a film.
I wish I had $1 million.
This event, a showing of festive favourite It's a Wonderful Life, drawing a near sellout crowd on a weekday.
We do appreciate, our competitors within the city centre. They've got the big, massive 13 screens. But if we can make this into a community cinema, a nice feel, we think that the customers will continue to come through the door.
It seems cinema is undergoing its own remake, with many hoping it remains a big hit. Joe Black, BBC News.
We've mentioned some of the havoc dense fog's been causing for many today. Well, the horse Val Dancer, ridden by jockey Charlie Hammond, managed to win the Welsh Grand National at Chepstow in tough conditions. For long spells, the riders couldn't be seen even from the stands or by those watching on television at home. Val Dancer held off a late challenge by second-place Jubilee Express with I Will Do It, finishing third. We managed to see them there. How bad is this fog getting, Ben?
It's been very widespread, Clive. Views like that for many of us today. It should improve slowly but surely over the weekend. But a beautiful scene to show you first of all, because although we have had a lot of fog at low levels, higher up in the atmosphere, a zone of drier air and a little bit of sunshine over the tops of the hills. That was the scene in the northeast of Wales earlier on today. And in some of that sunshine, Lake Vyrnwy in mid-Wales got up to 12 degrees Celsius today. Edinburgh, parts of Northern Ireland, 11, 12 degrees, but stuck in the fog. London, Bristol, Birmingham stuck in single digits. That was how it looked in Birmingham earlier on. Temperatures here no better than 3 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And I think that fog is going to linger across large parts of England and Wales through the night. We will see some further disruption on the roads and at the airports. Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing more clear breaks, although here a frontal system will start to bring some outbreaks of rain. And that weather front is going to sneak its way a little bit further southwards as we go through the day tomorrow. Now, it's this area of high pressure that's been trapping all the cloud and the fog. That high starting to shift away towards continental Europe. So slowly but surely tomorrow, I am hopeful that some of that fog will start to lift. Parts of northern England, Wales particularly, may see some sunshine. Across Scotland and Northern Ireland, this band of cloud and rain, this weather front, sinks its way southwards. Sunny skies following on behind into the north of Scotland. I think it will be quite a cold day again towards the southeast corner where we stick with some of that mist and murk and fog, although this weakening frontal system here should clear some more of that away by Sunday. So I think on Sunday, less fog, more in the way of sunshine for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, more of a breeze as well. For Scotland, well, this band of rain starts to set in, turning very wet indeed across the western side of Scotland. Temperatures 7 to 11 degrees. Quick look ahead at next week, the end of this year, the start of the next one. It is going to eventually turn colder, quite windy as well. The chance of rain, maybe for some of us, a bit of snow. Clive.
All right. OK. Ben, thank you. Ben Rich there. That's it. I'll be back a little later than usual at 10:30 with the main news. Until then, bye for now.
Welcome to